Hispanic culture. Now, this time, we will be talking about the document, very significant document that was made by the Filipino people during the time of the Americans. Now, this is not just an ordinary document because it was actually a petition and an impeachment request for Governor General Wood. Now, we will be discussing who is General Wood and why was there petition or an impeachment request or a request for removal to Governor Wood. But try to understand that governors general, particularly during the time of the Spaniards, governors generals during the time of the Spaniards were appointed by the king, and they could be removed also by the king. Now, same with that are the governors general during the time of the Americans. These governors general were all appointed by the president of the United States, and it was only the president of the United States could remove these governors general. Therefore, there is no concept of impeachment. We cannot impeach the governor general, but instead we could ask only for the removal of a particular person. Philippines. That's why the problem here is, unlike the president wherein the Congress could impeach him, they cannot do that. They cannot do that because it is the governor. I mean, it is the president of the United States that only could do that. Now, the only thing that they did was to write a petition, and that petition was adopted by the Philippine legislature as a resolution on November 17, 1926. But this petition was not acted upon because Governor Wood died due to a surgery failure in 1927. Now we'll try to look into those people who prepared the document. Again, it was made in a form of a resolution by the Philippine legislature. But before it was made as a resolution, there were two people who made the draft. And those two people were Jose B. Abad Santos, and the other one was George T. Bocobo. And of course, if you are going to look at the background of the two, of course, they were lawyers. He became a legal counsel of the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And of course, the Senate President during the time was Manuel Quezon, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives was Cirio Osmeña. Thereafter, he was appointed as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, and during the time of the Japanese occupation of the country, he became Chief Justice. And of course, he was also the one who administered the oath of Quezon and Osmeña on their second term, because they got a second term, and he was the one who administered the oath. But that was during the time of the Japanese occupation. That's why Osmeña and Quezon took their oath of office in Malinta Channel, or a tunnel in Malinta Tunnel in Corregidor. Now, after taking their oath of office, they transferred from one island to another in the Philippines until they were sent to the United States. Why? Because they need to make sure that they will not be captured by the Japanese. Now, of course, before Quezon went to the US, he appointed Jose Abad Santos as acting president of the Commonwealth. That's why he was the target of the Japanese. Now, we have another one here, George Bocobo. George Bocobo was also a lawyer, and he rose also from a low rank position until he became the full professor and dean of the College of Law of the University of the Philippines, and he became even president of the UP until he was also appointed as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, if you are going to look at it, all these two people were close associates of Quezon. They are close with Quezon. That's why during the time of the Commonwealth, they were appointed to several important positions. Okay? Now, and that's why also, it was Quezon also who tasked them to write the petition, which was adopted as a resolution by the Philippine legislature, petitioning for the removal of Governor Leonard Wood. Now, who was Leonard Wood? He was appointed as Governor General of the Philippines on October 15, 1921 by U.S. President Warren G. Harding. He was actually a retired United States Army Now, when he was appointed as president, the tension between the Filipino officials and Leonard Wood was aggravated by the misuse of the veto power. Now, his term actually was characterized by the misuse of the veto power. And what was that veto power? That was actually the power of the president not to sign, or the power of the governor general not to sign the law because he was against the law, or he was against certain provisions of the law. Now, if we are going to compare that with his predecessor, Francis Burton Harrison, Harrison only vetoed 5 bills or 5 laws. But in the case of Leonard Wood, for the first year of office, he already vetoed 16. Therefore, according to Senate President Quezon and Speaker Ostenia, there was like a problem with that. Why? Because if he would always continue vetoing measures passed by the Philippine legislature, then there will be problem in how the country would be governed. That's why there must be harmony between the Philippine legislature and the executive represented by the governor general. Plus the fact that most of the members or high-ranking officials of the Philippine legislature, like the Senate President and the Speaker, were also members of the Council of State together with the Governor General. That's why there would be a problem there. Okay? Now, another case there is the interference of Governor Wood in the case of Ray Conley. Now, try to look at that. Conley was a Manila police detective. Okay, and the tension heightened in 1923 when Interior Secretary Jose P. Laurel sought his removal from service. Now, why was Laurel removed Conley? Now, it was because of immorality and misconduct in office by receiving money from the gambling lords. Conley was receiving money from the gambling lords. That's why Laurel removed him in office. But what happened was Wood ordered Laurel to reinstate Conley. That's why Laurel doesn't want to do that. He was the one who removed that, and after that he will be forced to Conley is an American. Try to remember that. Uh, he doesn't want to do that. That's why what he did was he resigned. Now, when he resigned, Filipino members of the Wood cabinet showed their support to Laurel. That's why they also resigned in the cabinet of Wood. But not only those Filipino members of the cabinet, all the members of the Council of State, composed mostly of Filipinos, also tendered their resignations. And that created the event which we call the Cabinet Crisis of 1923. Now, we will try to check the content of the full text of the document. You could see there that, according to the document, for a quarter of a century, the Philippines came under the American flag. And that American flag was considered to be an emblem of freedom and not an emblem of subjugation. It is a symbol of altruism and not a symbol of selfishness or greed. Now, what was implanted when the American sovereignty was implanted in the country? The purpose of that is to train the Filipinos in the art of government, so that in the art of self-government, so that independence will be granted to them. And it was the wish of the Filipino, or the it was the wish of the Filipino that this independence that is being promised by the American and this idea of self-government will be fulfilled one day. That's why the Filipinos are patiently and diligently waiting for the time that this independence will be honored. However, there is mutual understanding and loyal cooperation between the Americans and the Filipinos for 21 years. But all of this ended when Governor Wood was appointed as Governor General. Now, why? Because there was usurpations and arbitrary acts resulting the curtailment of autonomy, the destruction of constitutional system, and the reversal of America's Philippine policy. These were the things done by by Governor Wood. And this was actually heightened when Governor Wood issued Executive Order number 37, wherein he nullified the laws that create the Board of Control and that he assumed the functions of the Board of Control, which means that because of this act of Governor Wood, it seems that he was like disregarding the Philippine legislature. Now, because of that, Executive Order number 37, the Filipinos was able to remember all the usurpations committed by Governor Wood. And of course, those usurpations were listed here. If you have a copy of the document, try to read the list of the usurpations committed by Governor Wood. And of course, the most important thing here that was mentioned uh, by the Filipino representatives who made this petition is that he refused to obtain the advice of the Senate in making appointments. He also refused to submit to the Senate his appointments to several vacancies, and he even allowed these appointees to continue to be in office in spite or even though these nominees the appointments of these nominees were rejected by the Senate. Now, because of that, he somewhat like usurped the power of the legislative body. He imposed conditions to the legislative measures approved by him, and before he's going to approve that, meaning before I'm going to approve that, it must be like this, like that. Therefore, it seems like he usurped the legislative powers. He also intervened in the affairs in Mindanao, creating instead of making the conditions there okay. What happened was he created discord and dissension. And there were several others that were mentioned here, like even he tried to close the Philippine National Bank, and he even tried to amend the laws of the land. But all of this were just remembered because he passed Executive Order number 37, creating an executive board which is supposed to be or which must supposed to be created by the Philippine legislature. Now, of course, uh, in this uh, in this critical case, according to or critical situation, according to the authors of the document, they want to deliberate upon the present difficulties of the government, and they wanted to determine how best to preserve the supremacy and the majesty of laws. Meaning the laws should be followed. The supremacy of the law must be abided by, but by what Governor Wood was doing, it seems that he was disregarding the supremacy and the majesty of laws. Now, the Filipinos wanted to complain and wanted to denounce all these actions of Governor Wood, but they they restrained themselves because they were conscious of the sacred and inescapable duty of their country. Or, I mean, these Filipinos were conscious of their sacred and inescapable duty to the country, as well as their sense of loyalty to the United States. That's why what they are doing is just they are appealing to the conscience of the American people for the justification of their stand and for the vindication of their rights. They are trying to ask the President of the United States to consider the petition that they are doing. He was appealing to that, but that was not granted because even before United States uh, decide, or even before the President of the United States decide on the issue of the petition against Governor Wood died because there was a failure in his surgery. Okay, now that's the main point of the Filipino grievances against Governor Wood. And as I mentioned a while ago, the main purpose of the petition is to remove Governor Wood as Governor General of the Philippines.